Okay, happy Easter, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well, staying caught up on everything. Not getting a whole lot of questions from you guys, so I assume you guys are doing pretty well. Today we are going to move on to lesson number 9, using reference images to sculpt in the proportions of a um, person. So the next few lessons we are going to sculpt a human head. This can be quite challenging if you've never done this before, but take in mind that we are going to spend the next couple weeks doing this, so it's not like we're going to try to do the whole thing in one lesson or something like that. And we got plenty of time. We all got lots of time on our hands, hopefully. All right, so let's do it. So lesson number 9 is going to cover pages 42 through 55 from the textbook. I already have the book open. And you can use these little shortcuts over here off to the side, and you're going to want to go down to where it says getting started, and the stuff that he mentions in here is really more informative for if you're sculpting something out of clay, not for digital sculpting. So I'm going to go ahead and skip. Oh, and it's also talks about when you are going to choose somebody to sculpt their likeness of. It just gives you guidelines on what you should do. So, like for example, it mentions down here that the subject should sit in one spot, and then the camera should get pictures from the front and from the side. It mentions things like not letting the person make facial expressions because it can change the shape of their head, shape of their face, I should say. And then down here, taking measurements. And again, none of this is necessary for sculpting in digital. All you really need to do is get somebody to sit in a chair that swivels, make sure the camera doesn't move, make sure they don't lean forwards or backwards, take a picture from the front, rotate them to the side, and then take another picture. And don't let them change facial expressions between pictures. That's it. So you can skip all that stuff here and just go right down to here where it says getting started. As it mentions, we're going to use the basic head model that comes in Mudbox. So I'm going to go ahead and start Mudbox. And we're going to use the basic head model that you see here at the top for the lesson. Notice again, I turned the grid off for all the stuff that I do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm still using that same folder, the one that's under Documents, Mudbox 2017, and Data. That's where I'm saving all my stuff for this semester. So let's make a new folder, call this Head Sculpt. And then for the name of it, you're just going to call it Basic Shape. And then for the next few lessons, we're going to be building off of each previous lesson. So if you want to just work in the same folder for all the lessons, that's fine. If you want to make a copy of it and move it over, you can do that too. The only problem with that is it may cause the reference images that you'll see in just a second not to work. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right, next I am going to download the pictures that we're going to be using for this from the website, Reference Photos, right-click, choose Save Link As, and browse to your Head Sculpt folder. And actually, I'm going to do one other thing. Inside here, I'm going to make a new folder to hold this file, because when we extract it, it's going to extract out like 8 different image folders. So I'm just going to call this Ref Photos and save the zip file into that folder. Depending on the browser you're using, sometimes you get a nice little shortcut down here that you can click on and then extract. Now, if you're not using the same software I'm using to extract, then I leave that up to you to figure out how to extract all these image files out. So let's go ahead and move over to the file browser and just look to see what we got. So Documents, and then Mudbox 2017, Data, Head Sculpt, Reference Photos. Okay, so this is what we just extracted out of here, so we don't need that anymore. And you can see that this is all the pictures from the book of the little girl that we just saw. And then fun fact, this little girl's, her name is Anna. She's much older now. She's probably 10 years older. And her parents are the one that wrote the book that we're using, so that's why they chose her as their subject, I suppose. And the mother and father co-wrote the book too. So, anyways, all right, going back to, so this is who we're going to be sculpting. Now, not to get too far ahead of myself, notice that we have her in several different poses, and she's doing something that he specifically said in the book not to do, which is she's making different facial expressions. And that's going to be a problem, and we'll come back to why that's going to be a problem later on. But for now, we're just going to sculpt in the sketch that was done for the front and for the side of the character. I shouldn't call her a character, she's a real person. I'm used to talking about video game characters. All right, so how do we do that? It's very simple. Over here, you are going to click on the side camera. And if you don't see that, if you see, you might see this when you start it up. Remember, all your objects and layers are located over here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus button, click on image plane, and then I'm going to, but before I do that, I'm going to actually go look through the side camera, sorry. So right click on it and then choose look through. Okay, and then go to image plane, click on import, and then you're going to want to find, that side image. So make sure that you have the right image, side image for the side camera. Click import. Oh, I already clicked import, sorry. Click on open. Next, we're going to be able to see it better by lowering the visibility. And the book suggests lowering that down to 0.3, and that works fine. And then next, you're going to need to reposition the head to make it roughly look like what we have here. Now, part of the problem of getting this to line up is that the default basic head shape in Mudbox is an adult. So that's really what this lesson is all about, is changing the proportions to be from that of an adult to that of a child, and then making it match the outline of her head as closely as we possibly can. All right, so that looks like it's close enough to me. Next, let's go ahead, and then next we're going to make a bookmark for that. So you guys are going to have this probably by default, or stencil if the last thing you did was the bell pepper. So you're going to move over to camera bookmarks, and we're going to create a bookmark for this by clicking on this little icon here, and then choose add camera bookmark, and we'll call this our side bookmark. And what that does is it makes it so that if we move the model on accident or something like that, we can just quickly click on the bookmark and get everything to snap back to where we lined it up. Also worth noting right now is that I'm using the mouse, and that we'll be using the digital tablet for sculpting this, but I'll talk more about that after we get our image plane set up. So let's do the same thing for the front. I'm going to go ahead and click on front, right click and choose look through. Then I'm going to go ahead and just dolly it forward. Click on the plus sign, click on image plane, choose import, and then get that front image. Lower the visibility down to 0.3. Okay, that actually kind of lined up not too bad. All right, didn't really have to do much there, so let's make our bookmark for that. This is going to be the front. Okay, all right, I'm going to go back to the perspective viewport. And then next, let's go ahead and see what we're supposed to do. So first off, you want to make sure that you have symmetry turned on for all your sculpt brushes while you're doing this. You can recall that you will do that by clicking on a brush and then choosing mirror up here, and we are choosing symmetry around the x-axis just like we did for the bell pepper. So you want to make sure you have that turned on. This is just walking you through what we just did, setting up our image planes. Okay, we added our bookmarks already. Okay, and then here he just gets into a few best practices on what you should do. Go ahead and read over that at your leisure. The only recommendation that he has in here that I don't like is this one, where he says use the L plus the middle mouse button to move the light in the scene around. If you do that, you can end up screwing up your light so that it's in a weird place, and it's really hard to fix it if you do that. So I would say don't do that. Also in here he talks about using different materials you don't really need to do that. The mud material that they put on everything by default is enough to see everything. The important thing he mentions is this, which is to use the lowest subdivision level. And we'll see why that's important in just a moment. All right, so moving along. What are some basic things anatomically that we should note about a child's face versus an adult's face? A couple things, without even reading the stuff down here, you can see very quickly up here. Notice that the bridge of a child's nose tends to be very shallow and tends to be very wide, whereas with an adult, it's much more prominent and the nose is much more pointed. On children, it's just the same thing is true of the chin. Notice the chin tends to sit back further than in an adult, where your chin is going to be more pointy. All right. Also, we'll see that her cheeks tend to be more chubby than an adult as well. All right. So you should read through these and just sort of commit some of those to memory. Know that these facts for a quiz or an exam. Well, I guess we're not having quizzes, so just for an exam. Okay. The next thing he does is he says to make a sculpt layer and to subdivide. Now, I'm going to recommend that you don't do this. The reason for that is because when we go to use our sculpting tools on the model, the grab tool tends to work better when we have less things to move, less vertices to move. So if we subdivide this and we try to use the grab tool, it tends to result in a surface that looks very bumpy when you're trying to just fill in the outline or silhouette of the head, which is all we're trying to do in this lesson. So I'm going to recommend that you don't do that. We will do it later in this lesson when we go to do her eye sockets, but for now, don't subdivide it yet. Now we can make a layer at this point, not a paint layer. It's on paint. Let's go to sculpt. So we can make a new layer for this. And I'm just going to call this low poly. And again, this isn't in the book, but it's a helpful way to do this. And now we're ready to go ahead and start sculpting in some of the details that the book requests. So it has you start from the front. And what we're doing here is, you can see, is we're trying to match the shoulder. Where's my cursor? We're trying to match, it's hard to see my cursor, but it's down there on her right shoulder. Hopefully you guys can see that moving around. We're going to bring it up and form more of a round shoulder, and then we're going to take the bottom of the torso and bring that up higher like we see here. And we do this by using the grab and the smooth tools. All right, so the next thing I'm going to need to do is start sculpting, and for that I'm going to start to use my digital tablet. Now, before I get into the digital tablet, you may or may not be using one. If you're not, you can just kind of follow along as best you can. It's not impossible to do this with a mouse. I've done it many, many times using just a mouse, but it's just easier to do, I find, with a digital tablet. So before we get into the digital tablet, there's a couple settings that I want to make you guys aware of. So one setting for digital tablets that's important, if we go to the control panel, and then we go to pen and touch, is that you have the option for press and hold turned off. So if you go here and then you go into settings, you just want to confirm that you have that option turned off. If you don't, what will happen is it'll make it so that if you press and hold for too long, it'll activate some type of command. So for example, you can see I activated it, and now I'm moving with my stylus now, not the mouse. And if I press and hold the right mouse key, which in this case is my up rocker, so I should mention that too, that if you look at the bottom of your digital pen, you should have a up and down rocker. I use my thumb for that. Some people use their index finger. But if you press and hold the upper rocker, it'll activate this weird little circle, which does stuff. And we don't want that happening while we're using Mudbox, so make sure you have that option disabled. Okay, so that's thing to consider number one. There's two other things that you're going to need to do when you're sculpting. Now, depending on what type of tablet you have, I'm using a Wacom. You're going to want to go into that tablet's properties or preferences. And under the pen options, there's always an option for tracking to be in pen mode or mouse mode. You're going to want to make sure that you're using pen mode, not mouse mode. Pen mode makes it so that wherever I touch my tablet, watch my mouse, it's going to jump. So you can see it jump to the top right corner. If I touch the bottom right corner of my tablet, it jumps to the bottom right corner. Now, if it was in mouse mode, it would not do that big jump across the tablet. You'd have to literally like press and drag it like you would a mouse. So make sure that you're using pen mode. The other thing is that for your rockers on your tablet, you want to make sure that the top rocker is set to right click and that the bottom one is set to middle click. Usually this is not set to middle click, but in order for us to use the camera in Mudbox, we need to have that set to middle click. All right, so with those three options set for your tablet, you should be in good shape. Now, the camera controls are if you push Alt and drag using the stylus, it tumbles. If I press my bottom rocker, I can track up, down, left, right. If I use the top rocker, I can dolly, just like if I was using the mouse to tumble, track, and dolly. So that is your basic camera controls using the stylus. And if this is your first time using a stylus, I encourage you not to try to do this lesson first. I would encourage you to just kind of go in, create some objects, and just kind of play around and just get comfortable using the stylus, because there is a little bit of a learning curve to it. It takes a little bit of practice to get comfortable with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move back to the book. So the book is going to want us to fix the shoulder and fix the torso. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to my front view and look through. Okay, going to use the grab tool to do this, and when you do this, you're going to want to make the grab tool very large, just like we did with the old bell pepper, and the strength fairly large. I'm just going to adjust this. It's a little too large. I'm just rounding off the shoulder. Okay. All right, so that's all there was to that. Okay, now here's another trick. Now you can see I can't see the bottom of her torso. If I just use Alt and then track up, now I'm not on my reference image anymore. So something you're going to do constantly when you're sculpting on this is you're going to press Control, and I wish you could see it, Control plus Alt, and that'll make it so that whenever you whenever you track or dolly the picture, it moves the picture and the model at the same time. Okay, so Control plus Alt plus the bottom rocker will make it so that you can move both at the same time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and smooth the bottom of this. And you can't hear it, but you can see it. This is where the tablet comes in handy, is this quick scribble motion. It's hard to do that quick scribble, scribble, scribble with a mouse. Okay, so I just use the smooth tool to bring up the bottom, like so. And that's it. That's all we've got to do here. All right, now another thing you're going to constantly notice is that you might get something to match on one side and then it doesn't match on the other side. That's because this is a drawing based on a human being, and human beings' faces are not perfectly symmetric. Fun fact, the more symmetric a face is, the more attractive a person generally is considered to be. And they've actually done studies where they've taken celebrities like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, and they have these very unnaturally high symmetry scores when you look at their face. All right, anyways, let's go back to the book. Okay, the next thing that the book wants us to do is to change the proportions of the head. So this is where we're going to try to make everything above the shoulders match up with the concept art that we have. So for here, you can see that the main thing we're trying to change is the eye. We're moving the eye socket much further down. Same thing with the nose. The nose is going to have to come much further down to make it match up. So let's do that. Still using the grab tool to do this. Make this much smaller. And try to avoid making it too small, because then you'll end up with these weird, like, if I turn the reference image off for a second, I can't press Q to do that. Let's see. Okay, so you can see that it starts to get really bumpy looking if the move tool or the grab tool is too small when you go to do stuff. All right, so again, you're just going to want to make the brush fairly large. Oops. There we go. Try to get it down lower. And it's kind of hard to tell when you're looking here, but I'm looking at the underlying wireframe of this as I move it, and I'm trying to make it so that these edges stay more or less shaped like the eye. I'm trying to avoid it getting distorted. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Let's bring the nose down. Oop, I need to make it bigger. There we go. All right, it's lined up the nose very nicely. And I'm going to bring this down. And this is eventually going to be her cheek. I'm also going to line up the chin. And again, I'm lined up perfectly here, but you can see here it goes outside. That's okay. Sometimes people like to split it in the middle, like just get it a little closer here and have it in a little bit too far here. But again, don't fret over minor details like that. And that's it. So that's the front of the face all nice and lined up with our concept art. Let's do the same thing now for the side. Here we're focusing mainly on the nose, the chin, the front and back of her neck, and then her skull. Oh, and her ear as well. Okay. Now, when we get to the torso, the front and the back of the torso, we're going to have a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the head first, and then we'll come back and talk about the torso. Okay, now, you need to be careful when we're filling in the silhouette of the skull. Because what happens is if you drag too far back, like this when you're doing it, you may get it to actually look like it's lining up, but what you're doing is you're creating a ridge down the middle of her head. So if I switch over to the perspective view, you can see that ridge right there. It's just horns or something like that. So in other words, when you're working from the side view, undo that. Okay, when you're working from the side view, you want to try to get the tablet as far to the front of the skull as possible when you're pulling, so that you're pulling it out without creating that ridge down the middle. And it's almost a good thing to just kind of guess from the perspective viewport. From here, first, and then come back to the side view and then make adjustments from there. So that way you don't get that weird ridge down the middle. So we got pretty close. So that's why that orient to surface is so important. The more I can get it flattened, the more I know I'm getting near the front of the skull. Okay, let's fix up her nose. I need to make the brush smaller. Pull in a little bit. Give her a little bit of a suggestion of chin. Okay. Let's see, and then we need to make the move tool. I keep calling it the move tool. We need to make the grab tool large again. And then fix the back of the skull. Okay, let's make sure we didn't get a weird ridge on the bottom. Ah, stop it. We're looking pretty good. All right, not too bad. A little bit of a ridge down the middle. So for this, what I'm going to use is to try to fix this. It's very minor. You can see there's a subtle dip there. I'm going to actually use the smooth tool and see if I can just smooth it. And you're going to see me scribble really fast when I do it. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. Now the other thing that's worth noting is that he draws, or she, I don't know if it was his mom or dad that drew her, they drew the hair on there a little bit. So if you match it perfectly, you're actually matching to the hair and you're getting more of a bump than you should have there. So this needs to come out a little bit, but not much. Okay. Otherwise she starts to have a very like Neanderthal type blocky forehead. All right, let's fix the ear up by moving it over. Notice how I'm moving it in short little movements. I'm not trying to get it all in one shot. You should try to do the same. There we go, the ear lines up. Okay, that was the easy part. Here's the part that's a pain in the butt. The torso. Now, Mudbox is a program that was intended for adding detail, for sculpting small things into a model whose overall form is already correct. However, the little girl for this picture is a little girl. She's not an adult, and her whole torso is much more further forward in her posture than the basic head model for Mudbox. So Mudbox is not happy with taking large chunks of a model and shifting them around. So the result is that we're probably going to have something that looks kind of bumpy by the time we're done. But we're sculpting a face, and that's what we're focusing on for all these lessons. We're not sculpting anything on the torso, so we're not doing like any musculature or anything like that. So just do the best you can, and if it looks a little bumpy, we can live with it. And as far as the back is concerned, you don't have to make it match perfectly down here. If the back is out, then it's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's bring this forward. So you can see her shoulder's supposed to be like right there, but it's pretty tough. Okay. You can see it's just not liking that. So I'm going to actually switch over to the perspective viewport. Oops. And you're going to see it's going to look terrible. It's going to look all bumpy and wavy and weird. Again, that's okay. I'm just going to try to use the smooth tool at this point and just see if that can smooth it out for me a little bit. And I'm just doing real quick little hits with the smooth tool on it. That's good. Okay, now for this, see how these are starting to look a little skewed? Again, we're not going to sculpt anything on the shoulder, but just to make it so that it's not like that, you can use the relax tool. That'll make it so that it makes it more like squares without changing the overall shape of the model. Okay, so again, we got some weird looking stuff on here. I guess I could fix up her shoulder a little bit before I move on. Give her a little bit more of a suggestion of the shoulder. That looks better. But again, don't overly concern yourself with making, like this looks terrible right here, the way it's folded out. And again, it's because Mudbox wasn't meant for that. I guess I could fix it a little bit by making the brush really tiny, pulling it in. Again, you guys don't worry about it. I'm just being a little overly concerned with it. Anyways, all right. And then I don't like that bump down there, but it's okay. We'll leave it there. Okay, so just get it to something like that. The main thing is that her neck. The main thing is that her silhouette of her neck to the base of her skull looks good. Otherwise, it's going to look funny. So for her back, don't worry. But for here, you don't want to leave it real super flat like this. So I'm going to go ahead and use the grab tool and just bring this in a little bit. Pull this out a little. See if you pull it out, it's not going to match the reference image. Okay, let's try using the relax tool. Again, the book doesn't mention the relax tool, but the relax tool will try to make these more like squares, like you see there. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. There we go. She's happy now. She's got a neck. She's got a neck, she's got a base to her skull, she's a happy kid. All right, a little bit of a bump here. Let's pull that out, round off her skull. And now I'm just going to tumble, just kind of look at the model and make sure that there's no places where I have odd bumps or anything like that. But you can see it's starting to look a little bit like that kid. Okay. Jaw looks a little too wide. Let's check the front reference image. Oh wow, this is already 30 minutes in. Sorry, you guys. Ah. Actually, looked like symmetry wasn't working on that. Okay, that's good enough because I'm realizing that this is video. Video is already getting, now our head looks super pointy. And this video is already getting a little bit longer than it should be. All right, moving on. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to roughen the eye sockets. Okay, the main thing that entails is using the bulge tool, and we're going to push in. So this is before on the left and after on the right. So the main thing is look up here by the cheekbone. You can see that the cheek is much more prominent. That's because we use the invert to go all the way around the edge. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Yeah, her face looks way too thin. So we'll go ahead and give her a little bit of a cheek. Make the grab tool smaller. There we go. And then we're now at the point where, before we use the bulge tool, that we need to refine the model. We don't have enough vertices to work with here. So going back to the way back at the very beginning of the book, where it said way up here to subdivide twice and then put that in a layer, and I said don't do it. Well, that's what we're finally going to do. So after getting all that basic shape in there, we're going to subdivide it 2 times and put that in a layer. So remember Shift D one more time, and then go to our layers. Okay, create a new one. Call this basic shape. Okay. All right, and then we're not going to use any kind of reference image here. We're just going to go to the bulge tool. Make sure that it is inverted. And the book says to use a brush size of 35, which is like way too large. I don't know why it says that. So something more like the size of her eye socket and a very low strength. The book says 10, but you want to go lower than that. I'm just going to kind of push in here in one stroke to form the eye socket. So I'm not letting go of the brush, and then around the side as well. So you can see that's starting to give her the upper cheekbone by doing that. Now I'm going to smooth. I'm pressing Shift. I'm just going to smooth a little bit. Okay. There we go. So another thing that I'll do is I'll do a brush stroke and then immediately smooth it. That's a pretty common trick. Just makes it so you sort of work the brush stroke into the model more. Okay. Okay, so now she's got her eye socket. She's got the top of her cheek. I'm going to go ahead and now bring in more concept art. And we're almost done, you guys. The next thing you're going to do is the step down here. That talks about bringing in some reference images. So these are the other pictures that are included in the book, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to make the face match up with these images. Now the book recommends that you do this for every single picture. Where does it say that? Yeah, right here. It says make a camera bookmark for all reference photographs like you did for the first two. Now, like I said at the very beginning of this, the problem is that she's making different facial expressions in every single picture. So it's going to be impossible to make your model match all of them. So what I would recommend instead is that from your perspective camera, that you import just one picture. And I would recommend doing the one where she's looking from 3/4 view, because we have one from the front, one from the side. This is 3/4. Okay. Now, if you need to adjust that image, it may come in large. It's the same trick. So if I use Control plus Alt and right mouse button drag, I can change the size of it. You can use Alt Control. I have to say Alt. I don't know what I said. Control Alt plus left mouse button. No, don't do that. You don't want to. Not left mouse button. I meant to say middle mouse button. Middle mouse button to move it around. So you can use middle mouse button and right mouse button along with Control and Alt to change the size and position of it. And then you're going to lower the visibility down so you can actually see your model. And then you're just going to try to line your model up with her as much as you can. And that's going to help us. And when I'm doing this, I'm not looking at her torso because, again, the torso for the default model compared to her torso is so different. I'm just looking at her eyes and her nose and her cheeks. Okay, and it can be a little tricky, and sometimes what it helps to do is just kind of slowly bring it in and out to kind of see how yours is facing compared to hers. So she's actually facing a little bit more that direction, it looks like. The other thing that makes it a little tricky in this picture is that she's looking to her right, which makes us tend to think that her face is more forward facing. It would have been better if she had been looking straight ahead for us. So try not to look at her eyes, directly at her eyes when you do this. Look more at the overall shape of her head. Okay, getting closer, so about there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and try to make it match up as best I can. So using the grab tool. Just going to try to make it match up as best we can. Okay. Looks like her nose is a lot higher. Now we're going to get into trouble if we try to match it too much here, because if I make it match here, I'll just show you real quick, it's going to make it not match anymore from the front and the side. And that may just be because I don't have my model positioned in a way that matches this image very good. So let's see, so if I make this match more like that, up, like so. Yeah, I think it's just because I don't have it in a very good orientation. Let's go ahead and check out the side. Yeah, see, now it's like totally not matching here. And that's the problem when you're trying to do the perspective sculpting to make it match the model, is that you can undo all the work you did from the front and the side. At the end of the day, though, you want to turn off all the reference art anyway, and then just kind of step back, look at your model, turn off the wireframe, and then just look and see what's working on it and see what's not working on it. But that's good enough for this lesson. So that's where you guys are going to stop. I could spend another 20 minutes working on this, getting it to match closer, but I think you guys got the main ideas. The main thing is that we're trying to lay down a nice foundation for when we go in to do the lessons on how to sculpt the other portions. So the next thing we're going to do for the next lesson is going to be her nose. And that is it for today. If you guys need any help on anything, don't hesitate to send me an email. or reach out for help. All right, good luck, you guys.